You might be wondering if vagus nerve exercises really work. Are they legit? Are they just pseudoscience? Or maybe you're wondering if you're just doing them wrong. If any of these questions are sitting on your mind, then good. You are asking the right ones. I've been a somatic practitioner now for over 20 years. 15 of those were in hands-on practice. So I've worked with a lot of people and I consistently see the same pattern emerging. That is that people will do a vagus nerve exercise or a somatic practice and they will feel better. They'll feel calmer, more relaxed, more joyful, more present, and then their symptoms return. Their stress, their anxiety, their tension. And it might happen in a day, it might happen in a week. It might be that they come back in full or that they just come back a little bit. But there tends to be either one of two assumptions that happen. And that is they need to do it harder. So more intense, more practices, more often, longer, almost white knuckling nervous system regulation, like really going at it. Or on the converse, they assume that they are in some way uniquely broken and that these nervous system practices just aren't going to work for them. And so they bail altogether and go searching for something completely different. So this is what I'm going to address, is why this pattern happens and how we can get out of this loop of intensity without lasting results or hopping from method to method, never quite landing on anything that seems to get you the lasting relief that you're looking for. Before we do that, I just quickly want to define what vagus nerve exercises are, just so we're on the same page. So vagus nerve exercises, or they're also called neurosensory practices, somatic practices, they go by a few different names, are body-based methods of calming your nervous system. And they do that through sensory information, meaning we use movement, touch, breathing, tracking your environment, things that your body can feel to send information into your brain and your nervous system, signaling that you are safe. And this is different than just telling yourself that you're safe. This is actually anchoring safety in your body, in your felt sense, at the non-verbal level. And these practices do consistently work. We see it all the time as practitioners. Our clients report that they feel better. We feel better. There's a reason that we got into this work. I know I got into it because it really helped me in a very profound way. So we know that these practices do provide results. So then why are people struggling to get lasting relief? So it's not in whether or not we're doing somatic practices or vagus nerve exercises. It's in how we're approaching those. So a lot of people tend to, with good reason, do practices in the moment when they need to calm down. So the question that I hear all the time is, what should I do when I'm feeling stressed? Or what should I do when I have an anxiety attack or a panic attack? In that moment, how do I get myself out of it? And that's a valid question because that's not a very fun experience. And when your nervous system does it all the time, it's really frustrating. However, if we're constantly trying to apply a technique or a practice or an exercise in the moment when we are feeling those intense experiences, what we are really doing is coping. We're not building the ability to tolerate stress and come down without our conscious mind having to intervene. So to explain this a little further, I will go to one of my favorite examples, my favorite teachers. My horses are really my best nervous system teachers because they really exemplify the part of our nervous system that is mammalian, that is nonverbal, and that is highly attuned to our environment and very reactive to the environment. Horses are prey animals. So when there's danger, when they sense danger, their initial instinct is usually to run. That's their best defense. They can also fight, but running is much safer. And so horses can have a tendency to bolt, which means to run very fast in a panicked way because they're triggered by something in the environment that they think is life-threatening. So that's not great if you're a human on a horse's back, right? You don't want a horse to just panic run away. I liken a bolting horse to an anxiety attack or a panic attack in people. That is your nervous system freaking out and saying, we're in big danger. Things are really bad. So the time to stop a bolting horse from bolting is not when they are bolting. When they've already started to run, you've missed the opportunity. Now, yes, obviously there are things you can do on a bolting horse that you should know if you're riding horses to stop that horse safely and get yourself off. But ideally, we don't want it to get to that point, right? We don't want the horse to get stressed and reactive to the point that it feels the need to bolt. And we could talk about, yes, if there's actual danger, but let's leave that for another conversation. For the sake of our metaphor here, your stress, your anxiety attack, your panic attack is that bolting horse. What we do for horses to keep this from happening, or at least take the best measures we can to keep horses from bolting, to make it as safe as possible, is we help them build the capacity to tolerate scary stuff without getting overwhelmed and running away from it. This is basically building capacity. That's what we want to do for our nervous systems as well. We want to build capacity, the capacity to have stressful stuff happen around us to an extent, right? This is not about tolerating abuse or violence or anything like that, but to be able to handle the ups and downs of life, day-to-day life, and not have our nervous systems bolt, not have anxiety attacks on the daily. That's not a sustainable or healthy way to live. It's kept you alive. You're still here. So on some level, it is working, but you're here because you probably would like to navigate life a little differently. So in order to develop capacity in your nervous system, we don't want to be drawing on in the moment practices all the time. Yes, use them when you need them, but also let's build the capacity for your nervous system to do something called self-regulation, which is that it gets stressed and it handles that, it mounts whatever survival response is appropriate in that moment, not over the top, but appropriate in that moment. And then when the moment has passed, it comes back down without you having to intervene and like manually shift it into the rest and relax and restore branch of your nervous system. And remember that I said that vagus nerve exercises signal to your brain that you are safe, and they do that through your body, through your nervous system, through the sensory system. Well, we need to sequence these practices in such a way that they are safe for your body and your brain to assimilate. If it's too much information, if it's too much input, if you go too intense, if you start white knuckling your nervous system regulation, your nervous system will double down on its survival strategies. And if you're casting about and kind of jumping from this method to that method to that method, it might not be too much for your nervous system, but there's no consistency there. And we need to have that consistency to be able to build the new neural pathways. So in order to share a little bit of what this looks like, I want to tell you about one of my students, Derek. And he shared that this has been the single most effective thing I've done in 25 years of searching about. So 25 years of trying different things, of researching. And he says that he went from swinging from emotionally drained or numb to highly tearful or bleak, to emotionally better regulated. I'm happier, perkier, and more like my bouncy ball self, but also calmer, more peaceful, slower paced, less reactive. I can function amongst people in the outside world and not take a massive fatigue hit. And that's really what we want. Is Derek's not talking about I have the practices to do in the moment when I'm stressed. His nervous system is just doing it and he's able to live his life. That's the goal, is to be able to live your life without that white knuckling, without having to manually intervene all the time. So sometimes people hear me say, stop regulating your nervous system in this way, and they sort of think that means don't practice at all. Don't do any vagus nerve practices. Like, do I just stop? That's not what I'm saying. So just to be totally clear, it's not about not doing them. It's in how you approach the vagus nerve practices or the neurosensory practices. You want to do them, again, in a way that is consistent. Consistent is important. At a dose that your nervous system can assimilate. Most people do way too much. I'm constantly telling people to slow down and do less. If your nervous system is highly stressed, for whatever reason, maybe you have a diagnosis of CPTSD or PTSD or some other chronic condition, your nervous system is probably in a heightened activated state and it can't take in much. So doing less, so at a dose that your nervous system can tolerate, in a sequence that is progressive but safe. Now, there's always a risk of being triggered with any intervention. There just is, anytime we're doing anything. But you want to approach this in a way that is the most benign possible, with the least likelihood of that happening. And if you're doing this consistently at a very low, tolerable dose for your nervous system in that progressive way, you've taken all of the safety precautions that you can, and then you just approach them slowly. You track your experience. That's another piece of it, is tracking what's working for you and making adjustments along the way. So if you were trying to get stronger for a athletic competition, say, you wouldn't go to the gym to build the muscle on the day of the competition. That's just silly. We know that. You need that muscle before you get there, right? You don't just get off the couch tomorrow and say you're going to go to an Olympic weightlifting competition. You certainly can't, but your results are probably not going to be great compared to somebody who's been training for that for several months. And you can have two people training for that and have one person go to the gym and just do whatever exercise comes up on their algorithm that day, whatever shows up on social media. And okay, that's what I'm doing. The other person has a sequenced progressive plan laid out by hopefully a knowledgeable professional person who is an expert in that and tailored to them. And they do that in a way that is safe so as not to overwhelm their system. And they track their experience and they adjust along the way as they go, depending on what they find. Like maybe there's a movement that's particularly challenging or an imbalance in their body, and so they have to adjust their workouts to address that or to accommodate that. Who's going to get the best results? It's obvious, right? Like the person who has the progressive sequenced plan is probably going to have the best results. Now we can make all kinds of arguments. The person who got off the couch used to weightlift, in the past, and they have muscle memory. But you get the drift. So the sequencing is a big part of the magic. I won't say it's all of the magic, right? The practices, the sequencing, the tracking are all really important. And then the dose, right? The quantity that you are doing. All of those things together form an approach that builds that capacity. Now, if you decide that you're just going to sit and let it be, which is another thing that people will often do. So the thing is, people are not static objects, right? This table is solid and more stable than you or me because we are living processes. We are in every moment becoming something. So we're taking in information from our environment and our bodies do things with that. Our nervous system makes adjustments and then we respond to that in some way. And this is mostly beneath your conscious awareness. If you do nothing, to change that pattern, to change whatever neural pathways have been established, they will get stronger because they're the ones that are consistently being recruited. Again, it's not static, right? It's a living process that's constantly becoming. We break those patterns by introducing new information. It's sort of like walking a deer trail in the woods. And at first you're kind of bushwhacking and there's branches in your hair and clothes are getting snagged. And the more you walk that deer trail, the more of a clear thoroughfare it becomes. And then the more easily your brain can recruit those neural pathways. And that's what we want to do. We want to build the new neural pathways of calm, of restoration. Now, that doesn't mean being perpetually calm, which is equally problematic. We want to be able to access all of the states. If you have a highly activated nervous system, and often people with highly activated nervous systems have something like a diagnosis of PTSD or CPTSD or a chronic condition, an illness, something like that. Not always, but often. This process still applies. You can still do this work and establish these new neural pathways. It may just take longer and you may have to go more slowly. Your nervous system may not be able to assimilate. Pine cone fell on the roof. Your nervous system may not be able to assimilate as much information. In the case of CPTSD, which is relational trauma, you didn't get your emotional needs met as a child. You didn't get regulation mapped for you, but that doesn't mean that it's elusive. You may require additional support. You may also want to work with other practitioners. You may need a therapist or other types of support, but it still works. Basically, the same neuroplasticity applies. You can still do this work and have results, have good outcomes at the end. So to sum all of this up, it's not what you're doing that matters as much as how you're doing it. The what matters. So the vagus nerve practices, they do work. We've seen it. We observe it all the time in our clients. My clients observe it in themselves. And we want to do it in a way that is in the right dose, in the right sequence that is progressive and feels safe to your nervous system, right? So not too much too quickly, with tracking and adjustments as needed, because it's not going to be one size fits all. If you would like a little bit more information about this and you're ready to stop casting about like Derek did and you want the map, I put one together for you. It's a free course and it shows you how to build a body-based approach to healing your nervous system so that you can get calm that actually lasts. And that's what it's called. It's called Calm at Last, and you can find the link to grab it for free in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, for being here. I appreciate it. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, share it with someone that you think would benefit, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.